Good afternoon or good morning. I don't know where you are, but here we are live again from Las Vegas reInvent with Cloud Talk Live. Please push. Yes. All right, everyone. Welcome to the program. I'm back again, but I'm here this time again with Larry Meyer. Larry, welcome back to the program.
It's great to be back.
Twice in 1 week.
Twice in 1 week.
Twice in 1 week.
You do a good job. The first one, they invite me back.
We call that being penalized by your success.
Oh, okay.
You know, I see that as our CTO has been very successful in the past year coming in, and boy, has he had some work piled on him. Well, hey, Larry, we are just coming out of Dr. Werner Vogel's keynote session, which is the one that everybody gets excited about. I mean, the data one's good, and the general one is really good, but this is the one we wait for.
Yes. Everybody wants to see Werner. And he delivered again today with an epic.
He's a showman.
Want to start with the epic open?
Epic open. Hey, one of the things I forgot to do, everyone, is, if you're watching this, maybe having some lunch wherever you are, but go ahead and introduce yourself. If you have a question for us about the presentation, ask us. Did you not see it? Well, then just sit and listen and ask us questions about what we say. But we'd love for you to introduce yourselves in the comments below. We're going to talk about the things we really liked. Maybe there's something we didn't like. What do you think about it? Do you agree? Do you disagree? Let's get the chat going. And but with that, you were just mentioning it started with an epic open, and I thought, on every level it was well done.
Yes, it started. If you haven't had a chance to see it, go watch the replay because it's Werner Vogel's coming out in a Matrix type scenario where he's asked to take a pill that will put him in a synchronous world where you have to do everything one at a time,
and he's thinking this is a good idea.
Yeah, and
synchronous sounds good.
Well, or put him in an asynchronous world, and he's a big proponent of everything asynchronous,
right?
Decoupled systems, which we'll get into, and all of that stuff. And so he's trying to figure out what to do, and he takes the
synchronous pill.
He takes the synchronous pill where everything in that world happens one thing at a time, and it was pretty hilarious as a way to get into it.
Right, and you think about, everything one thing at a time, it sort of makes sense. You hear that multitasking as an individual maybe you're not as successful in getting things done. And so you think, synchronous, what could go wrong? And then he sets the stage of going into a restaurant to order a little lunch. And why don't you take us through that?
He orders his lunch, and it's clear that everything in this restaurant is going to happen one thing at a time. The waitress is very slow about taking down his order. He has to really enunciate burger, fries.
Yeah, because at first he says, I'll take a burger and fries. And she's like, well, one at a time.
Yes.
And then off to cook the meal.
And then she takes down the order, and he's watching, he's expecting stuff to happen, one at a time. Yeah. But I don't think expecting that she is also the chef. So she goes into the kitchen and starts very meticulously making everything. And then the thing that got a laugh in the live audience, I don't know if you could hear it online, but it got an instant laugh. She goes to make the fries. She cuts the fries very meticulously out of the potato. She puts in one fry at a time because it's one at a time.
Synchronous world.
In a synchronous world.
Thank goodness they fast forwarded or sped that whole bit up, but ends up with a bowl of fries.
Yep. And so the fries fly through the air.
Yeah, because she trips.
She trips, and he bites a fry, and then he's back to the kind of Matrix scene, and he was like, wow, that's terrible. That's the lead into the whole thing. Then he comes on the stage live with a full Matrix coat,
big long duster,
and comes in and takes off his coat and reveals his T-shirt, which is always
everyone's excited about the T-shirt each year.
And this year it was Lambda, clear as day. Lambda, which is of course AWS serverless functions.
Yeah, they're event-driven functioning things.
So and so people are using them all the time. In fact, in our booth, our game Knights of AI is driven off of several Lambda functions, and so everybody's familiar with that. But that was the first clue that this was going to be about the evolution of event-driven services from AWS.
That's right. And so what we ended up with then is, as we went through the whole rest of the presentation, is talking about reinforcing through that, started with a nice image of getting some lunch. But then we got into systems, and it was all about how event-driven is better than non-event-driven, how event-driven is flexible, it is scalable, it can evolve. In fact, they talk about some of the early services inside of AWS, and because it was built to be decoupled and separate, that they were able to evolve the footprint from initially, I think they said it was eight services, to over 200 and some odd somethings that run it in the background. But all of that happening with no downtime, because you can just add to the environment.
Yeah, he was in that case talking about S3.
Yeah.
In 2003, S3 started with 8 microservices.
That's what it was. Yeah.
And then now, of course, S3 is its own application, but everybody uses it for file storage. And now 235 plus microservices. And it was a great example of how you build these applications in a decoupled way, because you can add functionality without ever having to take the application down.
That's right. And he gave the example, as you talk about S3, there's just those 8 microservices at the front now, bunches of them. But you think, what would you have to add? Well, initially it was just, how do we store stuff? And then it was different tiers, different types of performance, different types of drive storage. I mean, it goes on, different billing interfaces, all kinds of things. And so it was a great example as he then got into other examples, but it always came back to event-driven. And as you would expect from him, talking to builders, the people who are architecting and designing things. And one of those phrases, we were talking about that while we came up here, that stuck in my head as I was thinking about the overall event was, we've evolved from AWS just bringing out the world's greatest, seemingly box of Legos with all the things in there that you could do. And now it's up to you to go and build and create them. Well, now so much, and we've heard this in other presentations this week as well, they are doing things to escalate, to make it easier to create applications. So they want to do the hard work, you do the unique work that makes the application run.
Yeah, it's really all about simplifying how people can use, developers, builders, as they say, can use these building blocks in an easier way than they could before. Because before, and even yesterday on some of these things that they announced today, you would have to go into the AWS console, you would have to know your way around, or you'd have to use the APIs and code against that. But today, in announcing AWS Application Composer, they're starting to show basically what it is a low-code interface that allows you to bring on the screen different components and wire them together. And in the background,
in a WYSIWYG area, and it's really cool,
yeah,
because he said they split the screen,
right?
Code on the right, WYSIWYG on the left.
Right. In the background, it's doing all of that code, and this could really accelerate and open up AWS to a lot of new users who aren't ready to really jump into the harder stuff, the code, but are energized by this type of stuff. He said it makes development so much fun. And then a related announcement was Amazon Code Catalyst, which is also out. And both of these, by the way, are already on the AWS website, where you can get more information. And it starts with blueprints.
Yeah.
And one of the ideas is it makes it easy to build single page applications, no matter what platform you want to run it on. Mm-hmm. And it makes it very easy to share with a team. Yeah. And one of the interesting things to me is, instead of going out and trying to recreate and build kind of team productivity and messaging platforms, they are integrating things like Jira and Slack.
Right.
And,
all those tools that developers are looking for.
And GitHub. So they're not trying to recreate those, they're integrating with those. So it's a new, easy way to say, I want to build this type of application. Okay, here's my blueprint. That's going to get it up and running. I'm going to share it with my team. And so it's really bringing this low-code idea to these AWS services that have existed for years, but are now just going to be easier than ever to wire up and use to build applications in a quick way.
Well, let's talk about what that means in the real world. And there's some good questions coming in the chat. Keep those coming. We'll grab them here in a second. But what I think that ultimately means is, will it accelerate a developer's work? Absolutely it will. But I think what it also does is it unlocks I'll call them, I'm just going to classify a group of folks in this business as the business analyst, the person who used to, write requirements. What are we going to hand over to the developers to do the developing things? So now I think what we find is those analysts are going to be able to go into Composer and create the frameworks of sections of these things, different business logic maybe, in other areas. So then the developers can come in, then maybe connect to some unique data sources on the back end, connect it into larger environments. And that is going to be hugely impacting, because all of this stuff is great, but unless the technology makes a business impact, well, then it sort of fails. And AWS could be accused of saying, look, here it is. If you can build it, you can do it. You can build anything with our stuff, but you have to be able to build it. Now they're saying maybe you don't have to be able to build it. You just need to know what you want.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, that you could easily, people that don't have essentially advanced AWS skills can now start to prototype some applications. And when you get in, you kind of get a feel of what it could do. If you need more help, that's where you call somebody like Rackspace Technology.
That's right.
Or you call developers in your own organization, and they can help and take it from there. Because remember, on the back end, the underlying services and the code is still being written. So if it ever has to get to that point, developers could come in and help you fine tune it from there.
Well, you called it out as a feature before, because in the Composer now there's the ability to invite other team members in so that you can work collaboratively on the project. So it is the team structure. It is, let's think of, in this analogy, it is the business analyst to sketch the plan together, even drag and drop some code together, and then look to the developers to do that heavy lifting. It is the promise of low code, no code, where you are enabling your much more digitally literate organization to be able to create more, to serve themselves, and when they need to go to that deeper level, to look to the developers. And one thing you didn't necessarily bring up is those blueprints. Yes, they've defined blueprints, but you can define them also as an organization. So when your org does something one way, you can publish that to create consistency.
And the blueprints, I was just reading on their site, include the services. So it's not just here's what you need to attach together.
Right.
As you move that blueprint in, it's bringing all of those services together. And I'm, for one, am really eager to try it as kind of an armchair developer. I'm not a developer. I don't even play one on TV.
You play one on live stream with us right here.
But I think it's really going to make things a lot easier, because even in the past, hosting a static application on S3, for example, and getting it to a URL using CloudFront and all those things, that is not an easy thing to do if you don't know what you're doing. You're getting in and you're writing some code and you're defining your buckets in S3. And now all of that type of stuff is going to get a lot easier.
It's going to get set.
That's just on the beginner level.
And let's just jump over to some questions. Esteban asked a great question from the happiest place on earth down in Tijuana. He defined it as happiest place on earth. He asked the question, what about security? How are we going to keep that stuff secure in these environments? It's part of the blueprint. Now, if you've been paying attention to AWS this week, you know that there have been some security announcements, the whole security data lake, predefined storage environments for all of your logging, all of your signals to come into, and then predefined ways to look for those trends for security issues. So in the blueprint, security being defined inside of there as well.
Yeah, I think that's just another trend where all of these things that you used to have to worry about on your own increasingly are going to be automated in these new services.
That's right. That's right. All right, let's look at another question here for a second. Sorry to turn away. We're in tight quarters. Ask a question about cloud. Oh, here's a question from Lawrence. He says, thank you for the presentation. I did like to ask a question about cloud infrastructure. What is the difference between, what's the difference between compute and storage servers? This is we could spend a whole lot of time here, but just know that AWS is creating custom purpose-built, they're creating silicon for this stuff. So they are creating storage optimized servers. They're creating compute optimized storage. So whether that is in the processing, whether that's out of GPUs, whether that is in the bus to be able to communicate with the storage itself, whether that is in the networking to compute across those different computers. Think about the machine learning stuff they announced on Peter DeSantis did on Monday night at Monday Night Live. He talked about new ways that in these machine learning algorithms that those different nodes can communicate. Because apparently they sit around waiting most of the time to share a bunch of that information.
Yeah, and that's a great, a way to emphasize the decoupled architecture, right? Because now when we're talking about these event-driven applications, the compute is actually happening in a Lambda function, right? And then the storage is happening somewhere else, like in S3.
Yeah.
The database is somewhere else. So you have all these decoupled components all working together, and everything has its separate purpose, but that's really the point of what Werner Vogels was talking about today.
And what we would expect in a hyperscale cloud provider, not just working together, but working together at scale. I mean, he talked about, what was the database? Which one did he call out this morning?
DynamoDB.
Dynamo, we're running over 10 trillion transactions a day.
Yes, just an unreal amount of transactions. He did call that out. In a single day with single-digit latency.
Yeah. So Mohammed asked a question. He says, are all perimeter firewall configured as applications as well? So the short answer, if we're running in the cloud, yes, all of the infrastructure, regardless of what it is configured through code, should be configured through code. Can you still go into the interface and clicky and enable stuff? Absolutely. Should you? Not for production. Production should be scripted. Production should be part of, you're not just deploying code, you're deploying the environment. By the way, if you are watching this and you are here in Las Vegas, we are going to, I've got a session this afternoon at 3:30 Pacific time with one of our customers, Innovize, and how we've helped them transform from monolithic architecture running on servers and desktops into completely event-driven. It's going to be over at Mandalay Bay at 3:30, so you're going to want to hop over for that. What else caught your attention in this? I'd say we're running a little on time. These always go so fast, but what are some of the big things for you?
Well, then after he got past the AWS announcements, for the most part, he went into this whole idea of simulation, which was really, really fascinating. Talking about, to advance different things, we are going to have to simulate things. He talked about a certain autonomous vehicle maker running a simulation where the vehicle made 2 million left-hand turns.
It was a truck. It was for shipping, for getting trucks around.
Before it ever did one in the real world.
Yeah.
And so those are the types of things that you can do. And they brought out Epic Games, which is a huge game developer, developer of Fortnite, which is absolutely huge, one of the world's most popular games, and talked about, what they are doing with their Unreal Engine, this world that they have created, 16 square kilometers, 40,000 drivable cars, 35,000 metahumans, and it's a logically consistent 3D world, they said, and 2 million metahumans have been created to date.
Right.
And what's fascinating about this is all of these simulations are being powered in the cloud, and in this case in AWS, and just because it takes that much computing power, and you think about the scale,
right?
And that was really fascinating. And then the idea, and they did announce today, it's not quite out yet today, but reality scan, epic reality capture. I think the application is actually called Reality Scan.
Reality Scan, yeah, that's what I'm looking for.
And the whole idea of this is, instead of spending hours and hours in a 3D graphics program trying to draw a tree trunk,
right?
You just go out in a forest, you find a tree trunk, you put your phone around it, start scanning it, and pretty soon it's a 3D object that you can put in this world.
Right.
And so that is going to, and so we're not talking about, necessarily a world where you go and live and have your own avatar, but more, I think, more a world where you can simulate things and get.
Well, I think it's simulation. I also think I think this is the year that augmented reality and virtual reality start to have some really tangible impacts on the world outside of, I'm going to jump in the metaverse and talk to somebody at a fictitious bar somewhere.
Yeah.
Because he gave examples of buying some shoes that were custom built. They had some fancy stuff to scan his feet, and there were a bunch of other examples. But I think when the combination of the simulation and in experiencing a simulated world, but also the augmented reality where, we've seen this for the last couple of years. If you want to go buy a chair for your room, you can now with, who is it who does it? Not Shopify, but one of them does it. You can hold it up to, the chair that you're considering, and it will place it virtually in your room as you see it through your phone. And I think we're going to see more things like that in the coming year, and just it to be expected. You see it inside of the Amazon application. If you're buying shoes, they gave this example, and you can see the shoe literally on your foot that you're considering buying, which I thought was cool.
And then he later tied that to the AWS Ambit scenario designer, which sounds really cool as well. And that has, I think, been updated. I'm not sure it actually launched today. There's information on the website. You can look that up as well. But what he was talking about was you find a place on the map and it magically builds a simulation world based on that place on the map.
Yeah.
So, that sounds really, really cool.
Yeah, I mean, and that's where, again, we're getting into those areas where the technology underneath, up until recent years, very recent years, has been, here's this great box of Legos, go build what you want. Now you're coming with these predefined, whether it is the low-code, no-code stuff that's generating potentially hundreds or thousands of lines of code behind the scenes, just with connecting the dots on the screen, to stuff like Ambit, where I want to create a virtual environment. You could think of it in gaming, you could think of it in a lot of different ways, but just grab that section of the map and boom, there it is. And then you can create scenarios based on that with all sorts of different things. So Larry, we're heading, this is the last day of November. We've got one more month left.
First day of December.
Is it today already? Hey, happy December. Oh, November has 30. Okay, got it. Yeah, that's right.
The days are running together.
Running together in Vegas speak. But as we head into 23, and I think this is the time of year that everybody's talking about predictions. And as I think about what we've just experienced this week, we're going to see a massive acceleration in how technology envelops us because it's so much easier to create, and we're going to expect it.
Yeah, and one of the points he made early on is customers do really creative things that they never expected customers to do with this technology, and then they learn from that and continue to evolve and go build.
That's right. Well, everyone, we will continue to talk about the things that we've learned this week as we head into the rest of this year and into next, because the stuff that happened this week will transform the way we handle cloud computing and our businesses in the coming months. And I'm going to just touch really quickly on one question that I popped in there, and somebody was asking about, well, what about this partnership between AWS and Rackspace? So as we talk about how the technology can help get things done, the space where Rackspace sits is helping customers translate what their business challenges and goals are, and converting them into real output and real business metrics. So behind the scenes, Rackers working in tandem with our customers to create, like what we're going to talk about today with our customer Innovize. And they're an Autodesk company. They are changing the way we approach water management and the full water life cycle. So if you're here in Las Vegas, come see me over in that session. It's going to be super fun. But as we head out of this week, we'll continue to talk about these things. It's probably the last time we're live. I'm on a plane bright and early heading back to Texas tomorrow. So thank you so much for being a part of the program. Larry, you've been the co-host of the lives this week, which have been super fun.
Yeah, it has been super fun. Thanks for having me. Hopefully we can do more.
100% we will. And folks, I'm going to be back on Tuesday morning. Actually, we're in Phoenix at that point. Maybe you want to get up early and co-host with that. We have a great guest from App Dynamics who's going to be on. I'd love to see you there. So back at the normal times, 8:30 Central Time. Until then, I hope you have an amazing afternoon. Let's go find some getting out of here music and have a great day, everyone. It's great to see you.